Hi, everybody. Tim Hagan from Progress Coaching. Here's a little humor to start us off. I completely forgot to do last week. I was on vacation before, came back, and as we all know what happens, everything piles up and you just completely forget. So, today we're going to talk about something that I think is really prevalent in the marketplace. McKinsey just came out with a study that I think was startling. Now, I'm a big fan of McKinsey. The research is fantastic. I put them up there with the Gallup organization. And what they came out with is 41% of the people stated they were leaving their employers, their organizations they were working for, due to a lack of career advancement in conversations. The third statistic they had was 33% said they were leaving because of a lack of inspiration and caring. Think about the two things I just said to you: lack of career development. And then the third statistic, the third highest, 33% said due to a lack of caring. Think about that. Now, even though I look at you and say, I care, and every time you talk, I turn away or I look at my phone, I represent that I don't care. So, the number one rule that I want you to think about when you're coaching or your leaders coaching: do not try to motivate your people. Sounds crazy. Do not try to motivate your people until you first understand what motivates. So when you find your employees or your employee's motivator, you have a leverage stick, not to manipulate and leverage or to manipulate, yet a point of reference you can leverage so they can feel like their careers are developing. Look, the pandemic over the last 2 to 3 years, and unbeknownst to people, everyone thinks the pandemic's over. The pandemic is not over. It has not been announced. And when you think about someone's motivator, I'll share with you a little bit on a personal level. My wife, who's leaving her organization after 26 years, very unusual for doctors to leave, going to a new organization, starting her practice all over again. And I remember she was getting frustrated. And I said, "Why are you frustrated?" "I hate my job." I said, "You hate your job?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, what do you hate about it?" And she starts describing it. And I said, "Wait a minute. So you hate children?" And she said, "No." I said, "Well, you hate your job." "Well, it's not my whole job." I said, "Well, what do you love about your job?" And what I did, by the way, you never coach your spouse. It's terrifying. Is you start coaching people to what their likes and dislikes and loves are. She said, "What do you mean? I love kids." And I smiled at her. I said, "So you just don't like where you love your kids? Just got to find a new place to continue to love kids." She said, "Oh, yeah, that's probably true." Notice how calmer she got? So what we have to do is find out what motivates people. And the way you do that, when you find out motivation or find their motivator, is don't assume. Go back to our number one rule. Don't try to motivate until you understand what motivates and prepare to navigate. I'm going to share with you a very quick story, and then I'm going to share with you, I think, one of my favorite stories of all time. But this is with a sales manager. He called me up and he's at our client site. He said, "Got this guy. He's a little bit older. He's got kids, and he's just really lacking motivation." And I want you to hear this. I sounded so theatrical, don't I? I said, "What do you mean he's lacking motivation?" "Well, you can just tell." There's no substance in this guy's responses. I go, "How do you specifically know he's lacking motivation?" "Well, his numbers are low." That is not an answer to the question. How do you know he's lacking motivation? Has he come out and said, "I've lost my motivation? I don't care"? He said, "No." I said, "Okay, how do you know?" He goes, "Well, I guess I don't." I said, "Awesome. Here's why I ask you those questions. Don't assume, because the minute you assume, you go down a road, you're going to have to back up the truck and hear the beeping. It's loud. That's a tough truck to back up because he may not let you back it up. Why do you think he's lacking motivation from a perception standpoint?" He goes, "Well, his numbers are lower. He's always been one of our top reps." I said, "Okay, forget motivation just for a second. Skill-wise, what's lacking? Execution-wise, what's lacking? Knowledge-wise, product knowledge-wise, what's lacking?" Now, I know this guy, so don't take this offensively. And he said, "I don't know." I said, "Shame on you. You should know." Remember our 41%? He was just managing by numbers. So I sat down with the sales rep and we started talking. And I could tell he was uneasy. I didn't know. He had no reason to answer my questions. He had every reason to push me back. And I said, well, I'm going to ask you some weird questions, right? We're kind of in the same demographic. I'm 58. And he goes, well, I'm 52. And I said, outside of work, we're having a bunch of conversation talking about sales. And he was talking about the marketplace. And, he's just having a down year. And he goes, I've been doing this a long time. He was very self-aware of the ups and downs with the selling industry. And I could tell we weren't getting anywhere from a tactical business, why are your sales low conversation. And I said, well, let's forget sales for a second. I said, tell me about stuff outside of work. So what gets you jacked up? That's my question. I use that a lot, by the way. What gets you jacked up? And he looks at me and goes, what are you talking about? I said, this weekend, what are you going to do? He goes, I go to my boys' ball games. I'm all weekend. It's just from Saturday morning to Sunday night, just, activities. I said, oh, wow. And I said, that must be fun. He goes, well, it's difficult. My kids are in different things. And he goes, I'm a single dad. And I said, oh, wow, that's a huge responsibility. I said, I'm married and, my wife, we shared that stuff. I said, so how do you do that? He goes, you just do it. And I said, oh, well, what are some of your wishes, your aspirations for your kids? And he said, my dream, think about this. My dream is to pay for my kids' college so they don't have any debt. Now, I think I've told this story before. And I remember sharing with him, I go, I just got done. Keep saving because it's expensive. And he starts laughing. And he said, that's what I've heard. And his kids were like, before 10 and 12. I said, you've got some time. I said, how do you use your boys when you're selling? He looked at me and goes, what? I said, how do you use your boys when you're selling? I said, I don't understand the question. I said, do you have pictures of your kid before you make calls? Do you remind yourself? Do you have a chart of your 529 savings, your college funds? He said, no, that's a great idea. He goes, that actually would help because there are days that you just grind. I said, oh yeah, I grind too. Conversation changed. His motivation wasn't money like his sales manager thought or should be. His motivation was his kids and their college funds. And so I'd say about, I've told this story a number of times, about 90 to 120 days later, the manager calls me and goes, he's like a new person. I'm like, no, he's not. We have to help people rediscover their motivation. We have to help them rediscover their motivator. So I want you to write down 3 words: love, like, dislike. So when you have a coaching conversation, there's a present and a future state. In the present state, you ask somebody, what do you love about your job? What do you like about it? What do you dislike or would love to have taken off your plate? Your future state, what would you love to be doing? What would you like to be doing? What would you like to avoid or you'd really dislike that you wouldn't want to do from a future state or a future position or a future type of job function? That will help you explore. That will help them explore their motivator. So another quick story for you that I love, and I've told it before, was a guy in a manufacturing plant. HR asked me, they said, would you sit down with this guy? I said, sure. And the HR manager said, he's really kind of lacking energy. He's lacking motivation. I said, okay, how do you know he's lacking motivation? She said, well, just the way he walks. I said, so describe for me highly motivated walks. She starts laughing. She says, that's a weird question. I go, I'm using your criteria. Now, she's a friend of mine. And I said, think about it. You don't know if he's lacking motivation. He gives you the appearance, the perception. She said, yeah, that's a good statement. I agree with that. And I said, great. What motivates him? She goes, I have no idea. I want everybody to hear this. And by the way, great friend, great HR person. You don't know what motivates him, but you know he's lacking it. And she goes, boy, that's a little hypocritical of me. And we both started laughing. I go, look, I make the same mistake too. But if you don't know what motivates, we are left to this negative connotation. This negative perception is he lacks motivation. So I sit down with him. We're in the lunchroom. It's kind of an open area. Doesn't know me. He isn't, again, much like the sales guy. He doesn't have any reason to answer my questions. And I said, so how's it going at work? And he goes, good. I said, do you love, like, dislike working here? He said, I like it. Notice he didn't choose love. I said, what would you get you to love it? He said, I have no idea. So after about 20 minutes of those type of questions, I wasn't getting anywhere. So remember what I said, prepare to navigate. I heard someone yesterday, a really good friend of mine at a client site, Angela, made this comment, and I'll never forget it. She goes, "This is an art." And I just love this woman. She goes, "This is an art." And that's what coaching is. It's an art. The canvas gets painted. Sometimes we have to wipe it clean, repaint. You don't stop asking questions. You don't stop sharing. You don't stop showing someone that you care and make it comfortable for them to continue to explore. It is not a one question, oh, this is what motivates me. Not all the time. I'll digress here a little bit. We have a client who's having these conversations right now. We are up to 58% of people could not even come close to answering the question of what their motivation or motivator was. They've lost sight of it. What a great opportunity to reconnect and lower that number from McKinsey from 41%, maybe down to 20, by helping people rediscover their motivation. How do we do that? You ask questions. So when I sat down with this guy, 20, 25 minutes, we weren't getting anywhere. And I said, "So what gets you jacked up on the weekends?" He said, "What?" I guess jacked up isn't a great coaching question. He said, "Honestly?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "I love working on race cars." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, I'm in a crew pit for a professional race car driver." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that must be so much fun." I said, "You must have a gas." And he goes, "I love it." I go, "What do you love about it?" He said, "Working with my hands." I've said it before. I've said it in the past. I'm going to say it again. The door started to crack open. And I said, "Well, how do we bring that guy who loves to work his hands into the company?" And he goes, "I have no idea." And I thought, well, this is kind of obvious because maintenance has got all these openings. He said, I can't go to maintenance. I said, "How come?" He said, "I can't afford the pay cut. I'm a single dad. I've got kids at home. I can't afford the pay cut." I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, let's do this. Let's get back together. Could I have your permission to go to HR and talk about maybe doing something creatively? I don't know if they can or they can't. That's not my role here." He said, "Sure, I'm okay with it. I've been honest and transparent." I said, "Absolutely." Sit down with the HR manager. His motivation was working with his hands. Now, he was on the shop floor as a team leader. He was actually a pretty good leader, not a great leader. He didn't love it. He liked it. Yet he loves to work with his hands. So we created a hybrid. We made him a team supervisor in maintenance, but half his job was fixing equipment, which he loved. So when we find out what someone's motivator is, okay, we have to think about the great stories we can share. Think about a great story you can share or would like to share. I go back to career development. I go back to a simple concept called WIFT. What's in it for them? We have two things at play here. We have our job expectations. That's what I typically will coach to as a typical manager. Get the job done, higher performance, get it done on time, project follow through, get the results, higher numbers, better metrics. That is not equal to something that motivates an individual. It could be, but it isn't a one-way street. Then when you take the hands and you look at what motivates them, guess what happened to that guy in maintenance? He became a better leader because he was happier. So what is interesting is we tend to motivate to the job expectations. Do not forget to motivate the individual based on what they want. So let me give you another example. I have a young lady who works again in manufacturing and wants to work into the office, in an office setting. She said, "I've been on my feet for 10 years, 9 hours a day. I'm tired." She said, "I want to find something in an office." I said, "So is it just for comfort?" And she said, "No, I'm not terrified of change. I like change." She said, "I want to get better." And I said, "What's the motivation behind it?" She said, "Honestly, a better thing for my lifestyle. I want to grow. I want to move up in the organization, yet I know I need to expand my skills." So it was somewhat of a lateral move. It wasn't from employee to manager. It was a lateral move, but it was a different skill set. And I said, "What's the truth behind what really gets you excited about doing this?" She said, "Honestly, I want to see if I can do it." And so we put her into Excel, Word, PowerPoint. She went for a customer service job, didn't get it, was angry, of course. And I said, "You need to go back to that guy and have him become your mentor because he'll never expect you doing that. That's how you change things. And that will get you closer to what you say motivates you. And she said, oh, yeah. I said, you're not the victim. You had the opportunity of interviewing for a position, quite frankly, you probably weren't qualified for. What a great learning opportunity. How will that get you closer to you working in an office setting? Let me give you one more. I have a young leader who wants to become a future leader. And he is a guy that does not lack confidence, has a lot of opinions on people above him. He's not ready. And I said to him, I said, so what's your ultimate motivation? He said, my whole life, I've always thought about moving up in the banking industry, moving up in the organization. I want to head up a department. I want to get into strategic investments. That's my turn on. I said, awesome. I said, so now as you move up in the organization and he had a very clear description of where he wanted to be. He wanted to be in investment banking. He wanted to move up in the organization he's working at and is still working at. And I said, so what's the key to you doing that? Now, I knew that he would talk negatively about upper level management. I knew he had an opinion. Remember when I talked about leverage point? I've got my leverage point now. I've got my carrot, if you will, not the stick. I've got the carrot. And he said, well, I think I have to know this about investment banking. I have to know this about leadership, and I have to know this, this, and this. I said, okay, could I add one to that list? He said, sure. I said, the current leaders have to become your biggest supporters. And so the question you have to ask yourself, not right now, because I want you to reflect upon it. Are they willing or unwilling based on the behavior you've demonstrated to this point? So what's at play here? I've got his motivator. He wants to move up in investment banking. His current status would not allow him because those upper level managers would say, no way. And what people complained about it wasn't a team player, didn't insert himself positively, was interruptive, disruptive in meetings, always rolled his eyes when someone else presented an idea, and would candidly, transparently, openly, out in the open, complain about people above him. And so when I asked him that question, would they be your willing supporters or would they not be? And do you know why? Honestly, don't answer now. Let's stop here and let's get back together. We get back together and he said, I've got some changing to do. I said, yep. I said, what's the change? He said, I've got to be much more supportive. I said, no. He said, well, yeah. I said, nope, you have to be absolutely supportive. You cannot condition your support. Nowhere in your job description does it say, have an opinion some of the time about what managers above you in terms of the jobs they're doing that you've never done. Just offer that opinion slightly. And he started laughing. He goes, you're right. I said, because someday you're going to become that guy or gal. So you got to ask yourself, do you want people to respect and support you or talk about you at the water cooler? He said, obviously support and respect. I said, then quit going to the damn water cooler. He said, you got it. I said, now what I want you to do is every week, I want you to write down in a journal an act of support you've demonstrated for peers, people above you. Don't do it disingenuously. Don't do it without being authentic. Do it because you really saw something that they're doing that was good and was done well. So, number one rule, do not try to motivate until you understand your employee's motivator, what's in it for them. It is outside of what you expect from the job. It might be something in the job, but don't make that decision for them. Prepare to navigate your conversations. Write out 3 to 4 what questions. And if you get vague, ambiguous answers, be prepared with how or why, what we call sub questions. And then be prepared to tell a great story. So before you log off, let me just share with you, we are doing in 2023, April 17th and 18th, in Bonnet Creek Wyndham Grand Resort near Orlando. I've got a cool thing for you. If you are interested in coming to our summit, we are offering it free of charge. What you get is our progress coaching that you pay for, and our normal progress coaching fee is $16.95. And then what we do is we give you 1 year of coaching pods, which is our community where you work twice a month in group settings and you get one-on-ones. We are cutting that price in half and we are giving you a free seat at our 2023 coaching summit. If you would like to see a brochure from the coaching summit, send me an email to tim@progresscoachingleader.com. I would be happy to make that available to you. Remember, find out what motivates. Don't assume motivation. It's a dangerous, dangerous game, certainly based on the McKinsey statistics right now. Almost 1 out of 2, 4 out of 10 people are leaving due to a lack of career development. It does not start with the HR department. It does not start with the training department. It starts with you as a leader. Good luck, everybody.